honestly. That's what this game showed me, that this defensive unit is the strength of this team, and they just need adequate offensive play to win at the highest level. When they get below average offensive play like we saw on Saturday, well, this is going to be the result.
Yeah, but I won't bail on the offense yet. We're getting Quinn, and I don't know if this is when you want to talk. I mean, Quinn's coming off this oblique, and Quinn, there's two Quinns I now see in this season. One was the surgeon against Michigan, which, say what you want about Michigan, they aren't as good as we thought they might be. But the defense, it was sound. It is sound. And he was dicing them up like a surgeon. That offense has a lot of threats. Now, it's looked a little different since the oblique, and Quinn even talked about it after the game. You know, somebody's asking him, is it still a problem? And he's like, well, no, I don't think so. Maybe it's in my mind.
What do you think?
I think he might be playing a little tentative. It's a weird injury.
Yes.
He did it while throwing a football. It wasn't a contact thing. It's a weird thing. We've seen, I guess Derek Carr's still out in the NFL with an oblique.
Yeah, I've seen multiple MLB hitters. They get that injury. Their swing's just not the same all season.
So I think, you come back, you are playing a little more tentative. You don't want to re-injure it, and B, you're just not quite right. And he's looked, in Sark's words, it was uneasy. Mine kind of tentative, kind of just not quite on it like we've seen before. Yeah. I have no doubt in my mind he'll get back to the Quinn that we saw just dicing up Michigan or whomever. He can play at a high level, and that offense, I'm not giving up on them either. It just wasn't happening Saturday night against Georgia.
So do you think that they could continue to win that way with the slice and dice of Quinn? And what I mean by that is just because it felt like watching that game, Georgia was just sitting on the underneath stuff to the point where that first interception he had, it felt like they were hunting him underneath.
Well, and Quinn didn't do himself any favors on that. If I remember right, he just locked in on, I believe that was Matthew Golden, who is intended to receive. Anyway, he really seemed locked in.
One read, yeah.
And that's what I mean. That's Quinn's better than that. I mean, he'd tell you that that's not what he usually does. If he doesn't see what he wants, he goes to 2 and 3. And that's what, I mean, again, that's what he was doing against Michigan, and it was beautiful. It's kind of a symphony, as far boom, boom, boom. Yeah. It just, you can't make those kind of mistakes, and they weren't all Quinn mistakes. But again, if he's playing at a little lower level than we're used to seeing from him, and then the rest of the guys are making some mistakes, it can get ugly quick against Georgia.
We came this close to seeing Quinn Ewers' last snap as the starting quarterback of Texas. Because let's say Arch came in, those 2 drives, and looked fine to great, then that could have literally been his career at Texas right there. Because once you open the floodgates with the benching decision, that was on the table. I mean, I know Sark downplayed it, of course, hey, we just need to give Quinn a rest, a chance to reset. And you mentioned he played better in the second half. Sure, kind of, because I look at the second half, and the 2 scoring drives happened in the second half, right? Both of those drives were either penalty-aided or, fan-aided, as, we saw.
Yeah, I would never pretend to think that Arch could have won that job Saturday night. I just don't. There's too big of a body of work. Of why Quinn Ewers is QB1 and he's QB2. A lot of it has to do with a ton of experience and this trust and this relationship that he has not only with Sark but his teammates. So I'm not willing to go there. But I think we could also see, no matter, because don't get me wrong, Arch, for what he gives up in experience, and I'm sure the game's coming at him even faster than it was coming to Quinn. And it was coming to Quinn fast against Georgia. But you could see that stage is usually not meant for a freshman quarterback. No matter if he's got a red shirt under his belt, no matter if his last name's Manning, no matter if he's got 5-star talent, which all the above is true for Arch, that's a tough stage to come in on and then be a hero.
Well, tell me your initial reaction when you saw that happen, because I'm seeing Twitter, I'm reading everyone saying call to the bullpen incoming.
Sure.
Were you surprised when they made the move?
Yeah, a little bit, but then.
Did you like it?
I actually did, because what the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over. Something needed to change, and if that change was only giving Quinn a little time to reset, get into the locker room, make some adjustments, talk about this thing, and let Arch with his, because the way, and it seemed like Quinn wasn't doing himself any favors with the pocket, but Arch was definitely, if that pocket was going to start collapsing, he can go. And that's something that Quinn just didn't have going. And Quinn actually looked, like I say, a half step hesitant, whether it was with throwing or escaping and running. And again, I don't know if it has anything to do with that. That's what it looked like to me.
Are you concerned at all that this might undermine Quinn in that locker room?
Well, I think there's always, because you could tell after the game, and hats off to Quinn, going out there, answering the questions. It was an odd feeling for him. And I think he even said that. I mean, it was just like, he's a consummate teammate. He's going to say the right things because he does the right things. But you could tell that was an awkward place to be for him. Not the post game, but that moment, getting benched and then having to come back and do his thing, because he's earned that QB1 status.
Yes.
He's a third-year starter. Again, I can't say it enough. The guy's uber talented and plus experience, plus that he and Sark now, he's becoming an extension of Sark, of knowing the why plays are called. So he gives you a lot of advantages. But I was surprised as I saw it. I was like, whoa, this is happening.
Yes.
But I can actually see why, especially in retrospect, that it kind of helped in a way.
Like I said, I just feel as though you're opening the doors for more scrutiny than this program needed, because let's say, again, we have another tough game like this. I don't know where that could be on the schedule because we've talked about it before. It looks like it should be smooth sailings the rest of the way, right? However, I'm just saying, if we're also down a couple scores going into halftime, the offense isn't looking that great, you don't think that Arch chant is going to get a little louder?
Yeah, but I'm going to break some news to you and to anybody listening. Sark is not that worried about Twitter and people picking sides. He's with these guys on a daily. Been with them for now, in Quinn's case, 3 years, and Arch is now getting on close to 2. Like, he knows what's what. It's kind of the same thing with people second-guessing Mike Tomlin for going with Dangerous, with Ross.
Mr. Unlimited.
Yeah. But sure, fans can go nuts and talk and whatever, but he's the guy he knows what he has, he knows what he's seen, and sure enough, it looked like a pretty smart decision for him the other night, the way Russ played against the Jets. Just a crude analogy, but my point is, fans are gonna yap, tweet, yell from the stands. This is nothing new for Sark or anybody making these decisions, and the buck stops with him. He knows what he has, and he knows how to manage it, so I'm not that worried.
Listen, like I said, we have a ton to talk about, so we'll continue this conversation after we get a quick word from our sponsors. More Sports Office coming up after the break.
For the day ones, the diehards, the first-timers, the old-timers, for all the rivalry matches, buzzer beaters, and come-from-behind miracles. It's not just stats and wins and losses, it's the moments, the shots you can't believe went in, the times you can't do anything but believe. And it's all streaming right here on your connected TV anytime on Fox Local.
The Sports Office, streaming anytime on Fox Local.
Welcome back to the Fox 7 Sports Office. Dennis, so we started talking about Quinn before the break. Let's continue. Let's just jump right back into it, because I'm also just questioning about Quinn himself as the player now, because coming into the year, Quinn was looked at as a universal top 10 NFL pick. Yep. That was the expectation. Now that he's a quarterback that's been hurt for the third consecutive year, so there's an injury history, and he's a quarterback that's been benched in the biggest game of the season, how do you think NFL scouts should look at this guy moving forward? Yeah,
so those are almost two separate things, what you just said. One is the injuries, and I actually line up with what Sark said a few weeks ago when asked about that. It's like, hey, this is the third time in 3 years for Quinn. He was asked about this in a Thursday Zoom, and it's like, are scouts or NFL personnel going to start just slugging him as injury prone? Because that's a fair question. Sark's response to that, and again, you got to remember Sark's been there, done that in the NFL too, as a coordinator. He kind of knows the way it works, and his answer was, and obviously he's gonna protect his guy and stand up for him in a way. But his point was valid in that football's a dangerous game. That clavicle or whatever that he took 2 years ago against Alabama when he gets pile driven into the ground. It's not like he's some fragile kid. That was going to hurt anybody, right?
Yeah.
Sark's point was what the NFL personnel like to see is how they come back from that, which is that second part of what you were just talking about. Up until this point, Quinn has come back on fire. 2 years ago as a redshirt freshman, sat out a month and then came out and threw 4 touchdowns in a romp of OU. Last year, came back, I believe was on the road at TCU, played fine. This year is the first sense of why isn't he, because I've actually been surprised. I was surprised he didn't come back because he already had a body of work, a blueprint of no, he stays engaged when he's off. He stays locked in, dialed in mentally, does everything he can physically, and then he hits the ground running. This time we're not quite seeing it. Might have something to do with the level of competition, but it also, you can tell Quinn's doesn't have his A game right now. I think he'll get it back. So that, I guess, is what we watch is when we're talking draft stock. He's got a lot of season ahead of him.
So you don't think at this point today, as we're recording, that he's played himself out of the first round?
No. I think he's shown. I think these NFL guys, A, they love measurables, and B, they love arm talent. He's got that. They've seen, he's put a lot of good games on big stages on tape. All that doesn't just disappear. Maybe for fans or whomever who are more prisoner of the moment types, NFL scouts know what Quinn Ewers can do.
So if you were to say the top signature Quinn Ewers games so far, we'd probably say Michigan, the OU games, the 2
Alabama
out the
last
gate.
year
Alabama.
in Tuscaloosa.
You probably would also hold against him, though, the college football playoff game against Washington. It didn't look ugly, or it didn't look great at the start.
Yeah.
And then this Georgia game, too, is probably held in that same kind of company at the moment.
That game, that game against Washington, that was more about the secondary's inability to slow down Michael Penix.
It didn't help, but the fumbles also didn't help things either.
Right. But and I'll put myself, a lot of us can get prisoner of the moment-ish. It's just what we do in sports, right? We react, and this is fresh and right in our face. But I have to think, any NFL scout or anybody who's going to pull the trigger on making Quinn a first-round pick, how that works in the NFL.
Yeah.
When you make that pick, that is a franchise-changing decision one way or the other. It's going to affect that franchise for 4 or 5 years. And they don't make it lightly, and they don't make it based on, a kid's how he looked, in a game or two after coming back from an oblique. It's a bigger body of work that he's put up, and I think they take that in.
Honestly, sliding can be a blessing in disguise, though. Just throwing it out there for Quinn. I think Lamar's happier being drafted by the Ravens than being drafted by the Browns in the first round.
Talk to Bryce Young right about now.
Yeah, situation matters, so maybe it's not the worst thing, right?
But my point is there is a lot of season ahead, a lot of big games, especially. We're not even. There's a lot of regular season left, much less a possible SEC championship game in that stage, and then any amount of rounds in the playoffs depending on where they are.
Well, there's some interesting things. Obviously, we talked about Carson Beck in the first half here, and he probably has played himself out of the first round, right? But for Quinn, he does have the opportunity to have some head-to-head matchups against other guys who are probably going to go to the pros, the Miami kid's probably going to be in the playoffs. If they go head-to-head, him and Cam Ward, and he balls out compared to Cam Ward, then that's probably going to improve his draft stock compared to him. Shador's probably not going to get the chance to be in a college football playoff. So, there are opportunities there. There are some things that just going back to this specific game, though, obviously bothered me. I know that the pocket's collapsing left and right. There's no denying that this offensive line got worked against Georgia. But there are times that I felt like Quinn didn't really help his offensive line either.
Yeah.
Because I'll go back to the sack that happened when they're against their own end zone.
And that's where my head was going
and
too.
I'm thinking to myself, you have either the opportunity to scramble, get outside the pocket, or just throw it away.
Yeah.
Or just throw it away. Worst case, that's a sack that they didn't need to take at that spot. And when we talk about the field position game that they got put into, that was part of it.
Yeah, no, I think of that play too, and I rewatched that one, and you see Kelvin Banks just driving his guy into the ground, basically, and it's like, I've done my job. Wait a minute, my guy on the ground is making a shoestring tackle of Quinn at the goal line because he hasn't stepped up and either run it or, like you said, thrown it away. So, and again, watching it, you know, Sark tried to set the record straight on a few things that, because, you know, everybody goes Monday morning quarterback, but they do it in real time now on Twitter or whatever. And he was actually explaining a few things like, okay, yeah, you thought that corner blitz, that was all Quinn's fault, not so much. And he explained that there was a communication gap that was actually supposed to get blocked. So
great play by Kirby.
Right, there's a lot. Yeah, and Kirby coached his butt off. I mean, and he's got guys. You know, it's one thing to have strategy. What is it? You got X's and O's, and then you got the Larrys and the Joes, and he's got them both. And when it all comes together, and when a team that's won 2 of the last 3 natties is a little pissed and a little when they watch ESPN earlier in the day, game day, everybody lines up taking the horns, saying how great the horns are, and it's funny. We talked about it at the beginning of the year with Georgia. How it's like, how are these guys getting slept on and forgotten, even in the preseason in a way? Like, these guys have been, you know, the program for the last 4 or 5 years.
Well, they came in hungry. They came in ready to eat, right? That was part of the post-game talk.
They did.
And they ate. They absolutely ate. Just some quick Arch analysis. So obviously the 2 drives that we get to look at. So first time he gets to face that level of competition. And did he look scared in the moment? Well, there is that clip of him on the sideline with the famous Manning face. But, you know, I do like some of the things he did. That 21-yard scramble, and it just shows some of the stuff that Arch can do that no other quarterback in the country can do at that level, you know, mixed with his deep. That was probably the biggest thing. That he had his deep ball accuracy was not where it usually is. Yeah. And then there was the sack he took, which is just a horrendous sack to take, honestly. He just kept running backwards. And I guess that would probably be the youth aspect, right? The not having enough of those, not knowing, especially when you're not the quarterback who's been game planning all week for this Georgia unit, and you're thinking, oh, I can outrun some of these guys. No, you can't.
No, you can't.
No, you cannot.
Right. This is a different level. And it's, you're never, I mean, Arch Manning, so, you know, we've already kind of gotten into this polarized camp, and like you say, the people are like, people were ready to get rid of Quinn before the season because Arch is ready. He had his redshirt year, and maybe I'm just too old or whatever, but it's like, guys, there is a real value to seasoned experience at the Power 5 level in the same system with the same coach, especially when it's not like Quinn Ewers was some talentless walk-on, is it? He was a 5-star, can't-miss, generational arm talent kid that came in, and he's been soaking it up.
I think Texas fans were just kind of hoping that you would have had what happened with Clemson, right, where true freshman Trevor Lawrence steps in, blows out Alabama, takes the reins over for Deshaun Watson. I think they had like 1 quarterback in between there, but either way, it was just like they were in a situation where they had the next guy already lined up, ready to go, and I think there was a segment of the fan base here that was hoping that Quinn would just been so good last year that he could already been playing on Sundays this year.